Welcome.
Mabuhay! Selamat datang!
Tabe!
This is ECOnnected, the podcast where we discuss the interconnectedness of people, culture, and the environment with a focus on Southeast Asian perspectives. We are Ari, Erica, Athene, and Simarni, a group of Southeast Asian youth bounded by our advocacy for the environment.
Each week, we will talk about environmental challenges in Southeast Asia, modern and traditional conservation methods, and ways that you can connect and tune into the environment in a time where humanity continues to lose touch with the natural world.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the ECOnnected podcast. So, this is Erica, and I'm your host from the Philippines. So, at ECOnnected, we believe that modern technologies can be helpful in addressing some of our most pressing environmental challenges. However, the advent of technology has always been a double edged sword. On one hand, the production of new technologies has used up many of our non renewable resources, which has also led to excessive pollution. But on the other hand, some of the most ingenious ways to do conservation work has been through the use of modern technology. So for today, we would like to explore whether it is possible to bridge conservation science, technology, and society. How do we ensure that science and technology is for the benefit of the people? How do we balance technological advancements and sustainable development? Today, we will find out. So, we have with us today a very special guest. She's my fellow Filipina and also a very good friend of mine, Miss Jelaine Gan. So, Jelaine is an instructor at the University of the Philippines Diliman Institute of Biology. She's teaching ecology, vertebrate biology, and conservation biology. When not in the classrooms, she loves being outdoors, traveling, hiking, and bird watching. She's a self proclaimed bird brain. Finding her passion early on as a child, she is involved in various projects and organizations working towards environmental conservation. And she has co founded the UP Wild and Raptor Watch Network Philippines. Right now, however, she is at the other side of the world doing her PhD in biology at Newcastle University in the UK. And she will study how the fragmentation of forests into patches is affecting the movement and community of birds in the Philippines. So, without further ado, I present to you Jelaine. Hi, Jelaine. Welcome to our podcast.
Hi, Erica. Thank you for that introductions. And yeah, I'm really glad to be here. So I'm
I'm so
excited
glad
to
you're
learn as well.
here.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here. So
me
for
too.
for the people who doesn't know Jelaine, Jelaine is actually known as this sort of bird person back in our university. So whenever like we need to know like, oh, what kind of species is this bird is, or which like hum is that coming from,
Mhm.
always go to Jelaine to like help us identify the different types of birds. So yeah, Jelaine has always been our go-to person for birds, and personally, she's also like someone that I really look up to. So, uh, given that, so actually, we want to ask when and why and how did you become interested in birds or in biology in general? Like, was there anyone who taught you or introduced you to it?
Right. Okay. Well, I think in my case, it wasn't like a sudden moment na, I want to do birds already. It's not something like that. It's more of a gradual progression towards getting more connected with outdoors, with nature, with the environment. And that path just led me to birds, and that's why I took it up as a career now. But if I have to point into a certain timeline, I think it will be because of my exposure to the outdoors when I was joining, or when I was part of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines. So through that activity, or through that organization, I got to do camping, and of course, it also comes with exposure to the trees, to the animals around me. So it developed my love for outdoors. And when I was in high school, I joined a club. It's a bird watching club, the Wild Bird Club of the Philippines. And they were the one who introduced me to the wonderful friends to our wonderful feathered friends, which are the birds of the Philippines. And after that initial guided trip, initial introduction, I was really hooked. I mean, it led me to numerous other trips, seeing other birds, raptors in particular, or birds of prey. They've literally caught my love, and that just generally progressed into taking up biology in college, I guess.
So like what was in that trip that like hooked you up or made you caught up in birds? Like
Wow.
did you appreciate their flight or did you learn something new about them during that trip? What was it?
Hmm. Why birds? A very tough question, but well, I love everything about them. You mentioned a while ago na I like hearing birds, or I can identify birds from calls, at least in
Yeah.
the urban areas. I really love hearing them. I really love waking up to their calls and seeing them, like their colors, they're very colorful. And yeah, just seeing them and hearing them makes me reach this happy place or peaceful place that makes me relaxed. So when I'm stressed, I just go bird watching, and it will energize me for the rest of the day. And I think birds are also very special in that they're linked to our culture. Like when you think about it, a lot of our stories in the Philippines, at least, are have at least one bird in it, like the ibong adara, which is a mythical bird, or like our dance, which is tinikling, is actually based on the movement of a bird. So I just find that really um, interesting how culture, how the environment, and how yeah people are connected with each other through this activity of bird watching. And that's just like a very easy way to get people interested about environment. So maybe that's why I love birds, and why birds are probably one of the easiest way to get people interested about the environment.
Wow, thank you, Jelaine, for sharing that. Actually, it's really right up with our theme for ECOnnected. Like you mentioned, like the interconnectedness, how just even how birds themselves are already connected previously with our culture. I
Mm-hmm.
remember like you were right, like with saying like how birds are very much integrated into into the different traditions here in the Philippines. Like for example, the egongots in Aurora,
Mm-hmm.
they they have like this special affinity for the tariktik,
Oh
the
wow.
hornbill. So yeah, you're correct. And I just like remembered that now, like how integrated birds are here in the Philippines. So moving on, we actually like want to hear more about your previous research on the Philippine hawk
Hmm.
eagle. So, can you tell us more about the Philippine hawk eagle and why did you think it was important to study them?
Mm. So at my background right now, you can actually see a Philippine hawk eagle. This one is the male hawk eagle, and yeah, they were the subject of my master's thesis, and I studied them for around 3 years, I think, in a certain area in the Philippines. So why Philippine hawk eagle? Well, actually, the new name now is North Philippine hawk eagle. they were split. So just to give context, they were previously found all over the Philippines, but upon finding like differences in their genes, it was now called the North Philippine hawk eagle. So previously it's just one species, now it's two species. One is found in Luzon, which is what I studied, the North Philippine hawk eagle, and the other one found in the southern parts, like in Bohol, Mindanao. They is now called the South Philippine hawk eagle or the Pinskers hawk eagle. They're really important because one, they're top predators of the forest ecosystem, and that means they're the one regulating the whole community of their prey. So they're the one controlling the rats, the lizards, snakes, etc. of that ecosystem. Now, aside from that benefit, or despite that importance to our environment, actually, they are very much endangered already. There's only like around less than 200 pairs, so that would translate around 400 to 600 pairs, 400 to 600 individuals in the wild. And we actually know pretty much nothing about them. Before I did my research, I look at the literature, see what's already been available in terms of information, like in their natural history, and I was really surprised. Did you guys know that we don't know about their breeding phenology? We don't know how many eggs they laid in a single year. So just that basic information, even the prey, there was no indication of what their prey is or no list of what prey they eat before my research. And so that's like, how can we even conserve them if we don't know anything about them? And that led me to like pursuing them as my study species so that we can gather more information. And with that information, we can then implement like evidence-based conservation programs. So yeah, they're pretty much threatened by habitat loss, by hunting. There's only a few of them, and they're already declining in population. And yeah, so all those threats together makes them at risk for extinction. And of course, we don't want to lose our endemic species, and that's why we want to preserve them. And that's why I pursued this study.
Wow, thank you for sharing. So I wonder, so what is it specifically that you studied about the North Philippine hawk eagle? So
Mhm.
did you just study like more about like what kinds of prey they ate, or was it something else? Just that.
So, so for my study, one of my component of the study is to look at the natural history. So that includes what do they eat, and then second will be how is their breathing or when is their breathing. I did this study by watching a whole year of breeding activities and behaviors of a pair of North Philippine hawk eagle. And from that 1 year of observation, I was able to look at their prey because the parents keep on bringing the prey back to feed the chick. And then, of course, I knew about like how long does the breeding season last? How long does the chick need from egg to fledging? And then what season is it breeding? Which tree do they use? So those are the basic history information that we were able to gather from that observation. Now, for another component of my study was to go to 6 different sites in the island of Luzon, to simply conduct surveys to know more about their population. So I went around those 6 sites riding a motorcycle, doing road transit surveys, and which basically involve like counting all the birds, all the raptors that I see along that route. And this is actually quite bleak, but I would like to share the result is that in the sites that I've been to, at most, there was just 4 individuals of North Philippine hawk eagle that I detected along 15-kilometer of road survey. So imagine that stretch, the whole 15 kilometer. on average, I can just see 4 individuals of North Philippine hawk eagle. And that's just, it's a really low number, really low density as well, compared to other raptors that we have here in the Philippines.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's sad to hear that there was only an average of four. But it does make sense because you said a while ago that there's really about 200, only about
Oh
200
yeah.
here in the Philippines, right? So actually right now what we want to know further is like how did you do these kinds of research? Like what kinds of tools did you use throughout the research process to help you like count the
Mm.
birds or to help you identify and watch them all throughout the year? Because I'm pretty sure like you didn't like stay up in the
Stand there.
yeah, yeah, and just camp in the tree or something to watch them. So how did you do it?
Okay, that's a funny story and funny comment that you made because that was actually the plan. So for the breeding pair, for this hawk eagle that you see on my screen right now, the initial plan is to stay on the field, watch them afar using a technology which includes a binocular and a camera, and simply staying there from sunrise to sunset as many days as I can. And probably that will be like the whole week and doing that for like 3 months every single day, morning to evening, following and looking at their movements. That was the initial plan. But the pandemic happened and changed the whole idea of field work. Suddenly, we cannot go to field work. We have to all stay home. Travel is so restricted. I cannot go out. So that is the time when the technology really helped me to do my field work. But of course, not to say that actually even I was able to do some of those like daily observations, and it was really hard because you stayed out in the field. The sun is against you. It's so hot outside, and it's quite boring, I would say, because they weren't doing much. So it was hard to like stay out in the field and just simply watch them sit and stand, and do nothing basically. But yeah, technology really helped me. So when the pandemic hit, I had to move home, but I also had to do my study unless I don't want to graduate. But of course, I want to graduate. So luckily, I collaborated with a physics professor in the university, and or we developed a technology or improvised a technology that will allow me to continuously get records of videos, images from the field, and it will automatically upload it to a Google Drive, which I can access back home in my computer or in my laptop. So that was fun. The computer was just really small. So imagine a power bank size. That's how small a Raspberry Pi is, which is like a mini computer. That was programmed to get records or to record videos and images every minute and upload that to the internet and connect it to me. So the Raspberry Pi or the computer had an attachment of a camera, and that allowed us to look at the pictures and videos from afar of the nest. So that was one technology that I could have not done my field work without. But that was very specific for this nest observation. But regularly, when you do bird watching in general or like doing field survey, the common things or common technology that we use would be binoculars, camera, spotting scopes, and to get measurements of the environment because we usually want to know more about it so that we can relate it to the observations that we have will be like getting thermometers like for temperature, um, getting relative humidity, the sensors for them, and yeah. So basically, technology really helps us a lot in collecting environmental as well as observation data.
So I was just wondering, so regarding like this nest observation strategy that you had to do during the pandemic. So do you think afterwards, do you think that using that Raspberry Pi, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken, do you think that was like more efficient, or moving forward, is that something
Mm.
that you think should be used? Or do you think
Right.
camping out and watching the bird from afar would have been more, I don't know, better for your research?
Um, Straight out, my answer would be it revolutionized how we do field work. Technology revolutionized how we do field work, and I love it because I think it is expanding the reach. In the Philippines, we don't have many researchers. Not many. We only have very few of them that go out in the field too. So if we make use of the technologies available, like these low cost computers that can be programmed to become sensors, that would revolutionize and allow us to collect more data than ever. And when we say more data, that means higher resolution in terms of time, meaning we can get like months long data without spending a lot of money. Because if you stay out in the field instead, if you use people instead, you will be spending a lot of resources and money to get like sustenance, transportation, food, community accommodations, etc. So it's just more expensive to do it by human effort. So with these technologies, you now have greater coverage in terms of time and space. If you can deploy your sensors in different parts of the Philippines for a longer term, you get this data set that will be very, very big. Okay, it's going to be a big data. And without big data, the problem would be how to process them. But with that problem, there's another technology that you can use. And if you've heard about it, it's kind of becoming more popular now. The terms machine learning or artificial intelligence. So it's another way of managing the data using technology. So yes, I think it is something that we should adapt. It allows us it really opens up a lot of opportunities for research that was not possible before. And with that big data, we can ask bigger questions about our ecosystems and about conservation.
So do you think like with this new technology, like, you know, being able to deploy all these sensors, do you think like it is possible to address like the major gaps in our data? So for example, like if you look through example the list in IUCN, you will see like there's lots of missing data. And with these new
Mm-hmm.
technologies, it will be cheaper, or it will be easier to actually like look for these answers and fill in all these data gaps that we have
Right.
had.
Yes, I do believe that technology will help us to fill those gaps, but not all of them for sure. And only some of them can be addressed by technology. But even if I rave about technology, we also have to go back to the point that technology is nothing without the people doing it or without the people using it. It's really important for us to still develop researchers with good field skills because even if you put out sensors out there, it might be not in the right place, might not be asking the right questions. So I think technology is only as good as the people who use them. So we still need researchers. I'm not saying that we can live in a century now that we don't need to be out there because there's still some things that technology will not be able to help us answer. Because when you're out there, you experience for yourself what your animal is experiencing. And that gives you an insight about their behavior, about their ecology that no technology can give you. So it's also about being involved in the area, like meeting the local people, understanding the whole context of that ecosystem. That can only be done through physical presence, through observations on the ground, which is very important for me as well.
Wow, thank you for that answer. And actually, your answer is like sort of related to something that we also want to learn. So, throughout this process of your research on the North Philippine hawk eagle, how important were the local communities in your research process? Because you mentioned that you had to go through to 6
Mm-hmm.
different sites in the island of Luzon. So how were they engaged throughout this whole process? Like, were they there? Did they like know like where the birds were located, or were they just more like on the logistics? So how involved were they in the process?
Mm. Okay. For the surveys that I did, the primary or the initial involvement first would be to getting their consent, because when you get like when you do research, you have to have the prior informed consent of the local community first and the local government unit prior to conducting your research, which definitely makes sense because you don't want to be entering an area without their knowledge, right? So I think that's very important. So after the permits were given, that's the first engagement. The second will be to ask in the community or ask around the community for local guides. So for me, I'll probably get lost and get killed somewhere and end up having an accident without the very reliable local guides that I was with during my surveys. The local guides really knew more and knew a lot about the trails, about the habitat, the forests, and animals in it. Without them, I will not probably survive the forest. So it's really important to get local guides to go with you. And it's not just because you want to um, have guides around, but also because of the information that is being exchanged between the two of you. I learned a lot of stories, a lot of local knowledge when I was with them. I got to try different cuisine, for example. Was able to recognize now some of the dangerous plants to be around with and what to do when you see a wild boar in front of you. So those local knowledge, they're really interesting and really good to learn, and they help you develop more skills as well as a researcher. On the other hand, I think on the other hand, I think from my perspective, it's also nice to have that interaction to them because I get to teach them or show them what the birds are. Because even if they live in their near the forest, for example, not all of them will be very familiar with the North Philippine hawk eagle, for example. And when I lend them my binoculars and let them see through the scope or the spotting scope, it also raised wonders from their eyes. Like they would say, "Wow, it looks so beautiful when you look at it through the binoculars. Wow, we apparently have this species here." So I think that is one way I'm also giving back to the community by sharing what I have or what I learned about them, what I learned about the environment and the wildlife in their areas. So it's that exchange of information that I find also very rewarding. And then afterwards, so after the field work, of course, the data must also go back to them. Now, in this case, the data that I have was primarily given to the local government unit, specifically to the environmental office if they have. So it includes recommendations for conservation, but I'm not too sure how good those recommendations are in terms of being implemented, but that's the thing that I can do currently. So yeah, I know I could have done more, especially with the local community, but for now or for that research, the only thing that I was able to do was at least to give back the recommendations that was born out of the findings.
Wow. So thank you, Jolene, for sharing. Because from what you just shared, I saw like how, in the process, like the local knowledge helped in refining your research process. So because of the local knowledge of the community, it aided you in like finding the ideal sites or ideal area where
Mhm.
you can spot the raptors. But at the same time, by involving them, like they get to, I guess, be aware, or like at least like they get to
Right.
see see like the birds from a new perspective, like through the binoculars or through um, whatever else that
Yeah,
you help or teach them with the equipment.
yeah, and
Yeah. So
just to add, like, um, it also means a lot to them if there's somebody else pointing it out to them. Like, for example, if me as an outsider of that community, it really makes great difference for them now. So people are interested about birds. People want to go to the forest. Like that perspective of how important the normal things that they see around them. I think that gives them like a greater appreciation for the environment. And that is something perhaps that they can explore further for ecotourism in the future. So yeah, I think that's also one of the effect that we get.
thank you for sharing that. So um just an additional question. So during your time of engagement, so like the local guides that you met with, like did you know personally if they had like a pre-existing, for example, connection with the birds, or prior to your research or prior to you coming in, was it like,
Mm.
yeah, the birds were just like common to them, not really anything special? Or did they tell you also like if they had like a prior, if these birds, or for example the North Philippine hawk eagle in particular, was already important in
Mm.
their community?
It varies from side to side. I've worked with hunters before. So the hunters do have like a connection with the birds because they do know where they are. They do know where to wait out for them when they want to hunt them. So I have worked with hunters before, and those hunters do have a special connection with birds, and they're quite aware about the behavior that they have. But in other cases, or in most cases, the guides do not find them. I mean, we're not really that connected with the birds. So it was only for the first time that they were seeing the North Philippine hawk eagle. They previously thought it was just like another bird or like another lawin, a common bird. So yeah, it varies from side to side, but I've worked with both, and yeah, both of them were still nice to work with for sure.
Okay, thank you for sharing that story. So moving on, I'd like to like ask your opinion on a few things. So for example, the first one is some people believe that the advancement in technology has led to irreversible environmental destruction. And while others believe that technological advancements are also key to solving pressing environmental issues, such as in your case, where you were able to apply the Raspberry Pi to be able
Mhm.
to do field remotely. So, what is your take on this? Like, what is really technology's role in environmental sustainability?
Mm. Well, I guess I have to go back to the comment that I made earlier about like technology is only as good as the people who use it. I know it sounds cliche, but that's what I do firmly believe in. I've told you about how technology has helped me in my research, and I think it's helping a lot of other researchers as well. It's just opening up possibilities. So it definitely made life easier for everyone, not just for researchers, and made things more convenient and allow us to reach more possibilities and answer bigger questions. So that is for sure a benefit of technology. Um, on the con side, you did mention like it is very resource extractive. So on that end, what I would say is that we just need to use these technologies better. That it is possible to have these technologies even in a context of environmental sustainability. Now, how do we do that? Some of the things that come up to mind is that we need to change the system and we need to change the culture of how we use technology. Because I don't think it's now possible for us to go backward and decommission these technologies. There's no way people will agree to like leaving phones to this century and not bringing them to the next century. That's just not possible. So the only way forward that I see is to bring these technologies and create them to be better. for environment, for people, and in general. So, how do we change the system? There's some concepts around which are called like planned obsolescence and perceived obsolescence. It's like how for the planned obsolescence, is used as a marketing strategy by these technological companies, wherein they built in to your laptop, to your cell phones, and to your cameras, for example, a lifespan, a short lifespan, makes you want to replace them again in the near future. It's like how yeah, it will the when your phone breaks, sometimes it's more expensive the battery than to just buy a new phone. And because of that thinking, we end up buying a newer phone rather than having our old phone fixed. And so technology now has this short lifespan that it shouldn't really be having. Because for sure, we have technology that will allow it to last for years. But we're not doing that. Or companies are not doing that because they want people to buy a new model. And so if we change that, if we get rid of like planned obsolescence and allow a product to have this longer lifespan, then technology will become more sustainable. That also comes with perceived obsolescence, which is kind of more on the how we perceive to be in the trend. With the iPhones now, there's like new iPhones coming out every year, and we just don't need all those features, right? Like, what if the companies build them in such a way that you can just plug it in, the new software that will allow in the future? That would have your old phone, but with upgraded system. Now that's easier for the environment. It won't involve resource extraction. So that's how we can change the technology. We can also add in like recycled materials into it, which is I think becoming more common now. And yeah, um, keeping the loop circular into the system. That will be a great thing for technology to do in the future. And on the other hand, we also have to do this with a change in habit. So we should be always, people right now are very materialistic. And I think we're now engaged into consumerism, in the cycle of consumerism, and we can't get out of it easily. So if we have to change our habit, we need to think of greener choices, more sustainable choices that would involve sacrifices that we need to be willing to do. So it's that appreciation. I mean, it's that willingness to give up some conveniences for these changes. That is something that we need to build and change, so that technology can be better for everyone.
Wow. So thank you, Jelaine. I really appreciated what you said. And like my takeaway from it is that it's not really technology, which is like inherently bad. It's like our system or like capitalists, the business owners who use technology for profit instead of actually prioritizing how it can better or how it can make people's lives more efficient. So it's not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
technology that, like just because you use a phone or you use a laptop already means you're already contributing to, I mean, technically, of course, it will have like emissions, but at the same time, um, the usually the pressure is put on the individual consumers instead of like like the owners of these the manufacturers of these technologies who could actually instead of adding additional features on the phones that
Mm-hmm.
is really not necessary for the basic consumer, instead they use that so they can sell more, they can profit more, when in fact they can also technically design technology in such a way that it can be reusable. And as you said, it can be in a more circular process. So I really appreciated what you said on this. So um, another concerning practice, I guess this is more on research because you're a
Mm.
researcher. And one of the more concerning research practices is the so-called parachute science. So this concept is where usually scientists will go into fieldwork, they collect data, but they do not really engage or involve the local communities in the process. So what is your view on this, and how do you think aspiring researchers can avoid this kind of process or this kind of doing?
Mm. Okay, yeah, I do think it is very relevant, a very relevant research problem in the Philippines because parachute science usually involves countries or researchers from countries that are high income, Western countries, for example, coming into low income countries or middle income countries like the Philippines, for example, to do research where they don't involve the local communities. And I think it is really a bad practice. On one hand, we do need their expertise. I mean, that's the whole point why I'm in a foreign country right now, right? Because I do acknowledge and recognize that they've done more in terms of research because they have greater investment into science research. And we do need those knowledge and expertise. And I do believe that we should still continue to collaborate with foreign institutions and foreign researchers. But the practice that must be ended is what you mentioned, the parachute science, where the local communities are not engaged. Now, it's not just because we don't want them to be taking advantage of our natural resources and taking all the credit for scientific discoveries, but also because it just doesn't make sense for science to be like that. As I mentioned a while ago, it means a lot, or you gain a lot as a researcher by interacting with the local community. You gain their knowledge about the local environment. So if science is done without local engagement, that's just like science being done without out of context, like not really understanding what's there. So it doesn't benefit science. And second, the issue about like taking advantage is really morally wrong. Um, we always, I firmly believe that we always have to involve the local stakeholders, and this allows to create this system where there's open exchange of knowledge and information in the field of science, allowing us to answer bigger problems as well. So when I say that we need to involve local stakeholders, I meant by first the local community, like the local residents in that area of field in your field site. That's very important. Second, the LGU or the local government unit of that area. It's really important for you to do so because that's just like basic protocol for emergencies, and also because they're the one who's supposed to benefit from your research, and they need to know what those findings are. It doesn't make sense for anyone to just do research for their own merit. We always have to do science for the people. That's what I think. And aside from the local government and the local residents, I think it's really important to also involve local students. It's just part of that process of mentorship in science that is crucial to continue developing and creating more knowledge. What I mean by that is that when foreigners come here, it would be nice if they like take on students so that the students can gain the skills, and they can also like push help create more knowledge in a more scientific manner and allow us to basically stand on the shoulders of the giant, because that's what the idea of science is, right? And then aside from that, of course, with local scientists, we need to involve them. I mean, we always have to involve the local scientists and have this collaboration rather than them just taking all the credit. And yeah, acknowledging and crediting them as well in their publications. Because for sure, when foreigners come here, they don't do it on their own because they don't know anyone here. So for sure, there was somebody, a local scientist that was helping them, and they must be accredited. I mean, like given due credits in the publications and scientific articles that come out from those research. So yeah, it must and I think it is getting better as we are more aware about it happening. I mean, as we gain more awareness that it is happening. So it's a good progress, I believe, currently.
Thank you for your insights, Jelaine. I actually like what you said about mentoring like local students so
Mm-hmm.
that can develop local scientists in the area. Because usually what happens is, for example, a researcher goes to a community and then they use all their technologies while they just use the local guide as like just pointing where to do this, where to do that, when in fact the local guide, like usually they wouldn't know where or what the researcher is actually doing, because
Oh yeah.
yeah, like the technology is like too advanced, or it's too like usually like way beyond their I guess way beyond like what they know. So what happens is that the technology is still like exclusive to the researchers doing it, and but not really benefiting any of the communities. So what you said about mentoring the local students, or like whatever research you do, if you can involve someone who you can transfer your knowledge to, that's
Yeah.
actually a great idea. So the research or the technology doesn't only benefit the researchers but also the local community. So thank you for that, Jeline. It was such a great insight. So we're now about to close. And what you want to hear from you just now is, do you have any advice for students or people who aspire to be biologists, ornithologists, or researchers in the future? What message can you give them
Hmm.
if they are listening in the audiences?
Oh wow. Hmm. So, to all the aspiring biologists and researchers out there, I do believe that you should follow your heart. A lot of other people will tell you not to do it because you don't earn enough or the opportunities are not enough, and it's not a lucrative job for sure. But I think that you should still do it. It is possible to make a life out of conservation work and research work, and it will entail a lot of hardships, but if we do what we love and it is meaningful, I don't think it will be a problem at all. Life will just work out itself when you know your passion and just pursue that passion. You're going to be helping a lot of people, and we do need more people in this field. I can't stress enough how few we are in this world even. So if you have an inkling to become a conservationist, please go for it. The field needs you, and it will be fine in the end, and it will be really, really fun. Field work is just like the most amazing travel that you can do, and you'll meet all sorts of people from different backgrounds that help you develop this character and this worldview that could not be possible without such experiences. So it's a really fun and really rewarding field to go to.
Okay, so that's a wrap for today's episode. So thank you so much, Jelaine, for sharing your field stories, your research stories with us today. And for our listeners, we will see you in our next episode. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you to EcoConnected as well for inviting me. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We would like to thank the Mansfield Center and the YCD program for making this podcast possible.
If you wanted to learn more about the EConnected podcast, do follow and subscribe to our social media channel linked in the description box below.
See you next time.
Jumpa lagi. Paalam.
Selamat panalu.